Have you ever sat down and tried to figure out what you really want, only to find yourself flooded with worries, responsibilities, and endless mental noise? Maybe you've asked yourself, what should I do? What do I want? What feels right? And instead of clarity, you get confusion. As a therapist, I see this all the time. People often assume that if they can't hear themselves clearly, they don't know themselves. But what if that's actually not the problem? What if your inner voice isn't missing at all? What if it's simply getting drowned out? Today, I want to explore why sometimes it can be so difficult to hear yourself and why creating space might be more important than finding all the answers. In the last video, we talked about why so many people can feel really disconnected from themselves. And this week, I want to take that conversation just a step further. Because once we recognize that we're disconnected from ourselves, a new question emerges. How do I hear myself again? And the answer might not be what most people think, because most people start searching for more information, more advice, more podcasts, more opinions, more clarity. But often what we're missing isn't more information. It's actually more space. Many people believe that they're stuck because they don't know what they want. But in my work as a therapist, I often find something different. The answers, they're usually in there. The challenge is that they're competing with so many other voices. The voice of fear, the voice of responsibility, the voice of past experiences, the voice of family expectations, the voice of social media, the voice of what everyone else thinks that you should do. And when all of those voices are all speaking at the same time, it can become incredibly difficult to hear your own voice. Not because your voice is weak, but because there's so much other noise. Most of us live our entire lives constantly consuming music, podcasts, videos, news, messages, notifications, work, responsibilities, distractions. And while none of those things are inherently bad, they leave very little room for reflection. And then we become experts at taking in information, but we rarely create opportunities to listen inward. And over time, we can start to lose touch with the quieter parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that communicate through feelings, intuition, curiosity, desire, longing, insight. And it's also important to recognize that not all noise comes from outside of us. Sometimes the loudest noise is inside. Overthinking, self-criticizing, second-guessing, trying to predict every possible outcome, trying to avoid mistakes, trying to make the perfect decision. And when this happens, we often mistake mental activity for self-awareness, but they're not the same thing. Thinking about yourself is not the same thing as listening to yourself. Sometimes the mind gets so busy with searching for certainty that it drowns out the deeper wisdom that's underneath. One of the hardest truths to accept is that your inner voice rarely shouts. It often arrives in very subtle feelings. A small moment of knowing, a sense of expansion, a sense of contraction, a feeling that something fits or that it doesn't. And if we're constantly moving, consuming, analyzing, we will often miss it. Not because it's gone, but because we haven't had the opportunity to hear it. So often, people come to therapy wanting answers. That's understandable. But what we're often working toward is something very different. What we're doing is creating enough safety and enough space for their own answers to emerge, because insight tends to arise when we stop forcing it, when we slow down, when we become curious, when we create room for ourselves to listen. If this conversation is resonating with you, I've created a free workbook to go along with this series. It's designed to help you explore these questions more deeply through reflection and journaling. The other resource is this week's guided meditation to help you create the space to begin to hear yourself again. The last resource is my free workbook on helping you create the safety in your environment, in your space at home, to begin gaining the insight that you are looking for. You can check out all of these free resources, take what feels helpful, and leave the rest. All of them are located down in the description below. Because sometimes hearing yourself again doesn't begin with finding answers. Sometimes it begins with creating enough space to listen to yourself. You may not be as disconnected from yourself as you think. You might simply be surrounded with so much noise that your inner voice can't compete with right now. And sometimes the journey back to yourself doesn't begin with you searching harder. It begins with slowing down long enough to hear what's been in there all along. If this video has been helpful to you, please let me know what stands out, what is the most helpful down in the comments. And I encourage you to think about this question. When was the last time you felt truly connected to yourself? And if you'd like more support continuing this journey, make sure to subscribe, because next week we're going to explore something that often blocks self-connection more deeply, which is our relationship with our emotions. Well, my friend, that is all I have for this video. Until next time, bye for now.